and welcome to Indus News live from Islamabad. I'm Hira Mustafa and these are the headlines. India's health ministry says it has detected a new coronavirus strain in the country in addition to other variants found abroad. The country has recorded this year's highest daily COVID-19 deaths with 275 fatalities in a day. Meanwhile, Pakistan says schools in coronavirus hotspot areas will remain closed till 11th of April. It comes as the country reported over 3,000 infections for the past 7 days and 30 deaths overnight. Globally, the virus has claimed over 2.7 million lives and infected 124 million people so far. The UK has lauded Pakistan's efforts for peace and stability in the region and in fight against terrorism. It comes as UK's Commander Strategic Command General Patrick Nicholas Yardley Monrad Sanders called on Pakistan's Army Chief General Qamar Javed Bajwa in Rawalpindi. Pakistan military's media wing said matters of mutual interest, including the Afghan peace process and defense cooperation, were also discussed during the meeting. Israel's Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu is predicted to fall short of securing the seats needed to form a new government in the country's fourth election in 2 years. Exit poll shows Netanyahu's Likud party and its allies are projected to win 53 seats in the 120-seat parliament. Myanmar's military has freed hundreds of demonstrators arrested during its brutal crackdown on protest. Many businesses in Yangon remained shut and streets were deserted after activists called for a silent strike. This comes after violence where the junta claimed its youngest victim, a 7-year-old girl. U.S. Secretary of State Antony Blinken has urged Turkey not to retain Russia's S-400 missile defense system. He was speaking to his Turkish counterpart on the sidelines of the NATO defense ministers meeting in Brussels. Responding, Mevlut Cavusoglu said the purchase of the missile defense system is a done deal. In cycling, Australia's Rohan Dennis has won the second stage time trial of the Volta a Catalunya in the Spanish city of Banyoles. The Ineos Grenadiers rider covered the 18.5-kilometer course in 22 minutes and 27 seconds. UAE Team Emirates American rider Braden McNulty is in second, while Jumbo's Visma's Dutchman Steven Kruijswijk is third overall. Well, these were the headlines. News in detail coming after the short break. Stay with us. Welcome back. Now the news in detail. Brazil has reported record daily deaths from coronavirus as more than 3,200 people died overnight. Meanwhile, India has recorded this year's highest daily COVID-19 deaths with 275 fatalities. Globally, the virus has claimed over 2.7 million lives and infected more than 124 million people so far. More on the pandemic in this report.
Vaccine problems, protests, and new restrictions this week has been difficult for governments with regard to COVID-19 after U.S. health experts publicly criticized AstraZeneca for using outdated information to show how well the immunization worked. The drug maker says it will publish up-to-date results from its major U.S. vaccine trial within 48 hours. But despite this criticism, Canada says the Oxford vaccine is safe and it will continue to be recommended for use. In Latin America, Brazil has reported record daily deaths from coronavirus as more than 3,200 people died overnight. However, amid WHO's warning of COVID-19 surging dangerously in Brazil and protests across the country against his handling of the outbreak, President Jair Bolsonaro defended his pandemic response.
As orientações do Ministério.
The virus has arrived and it is being confronted by us, and it will soon pass. Our life must go on. Jobs should be kept. The livelihoods of the families should be kept. We should return to normality.
Europe seems to be shutting down again amid forlorn hopes of normalcy. Norway is introducing new national measures and will postpone the introduction of a plan to reopen society. Spain, however, will lift restrictions on arrivals from Britain on the 30th of March that have been in place since December. As the UK marked the first anniversary of the lockdown, Prime Minister Boris Johnson admitted the government's miscalculations about the virus.
The single biggest false assumption that we made was about the potential for asymptomatic transmission, and that did govern a lot of policy in the early days, or that misunderstanding about the reality of asymptomatic transmission certainly led to real problems.
Hong Kong authorities have suspended vaccinations with 2 batches of Pfizer's shot, citing defective packaging. In Australia, vaccine rollout experienced significant week 1 delivery errors, including a failure of shipments of needles to accompany the vials.
Pakistan says schools in coronavirus hotspot areas will remain closed till the 11th of April. It comes as the country reported over 3,000 infections for the past 7 days. At a press conference, Federal Education Minister Shafqat Mahmood said the matriculation and intermediate exams will be held as per schedule. However, he said the Cambridge authorities will be consulted for the postponement of O-level exams. According to the Health Ministry, over 3,300 people contracted the virus overnight. It said 30 more people died from the coronavirus since yesterday, taking the toll to nearly 14,000. UK's Chief of Defence Staff General Nicholas Patrick Carter has lauded Pakistan's efforts for peace and stability in the region and its fight against terrorism. He was meeting with Pakistan's Army Chief General Qamar Javed Bajwa in Rawalpindi. The military's media wing said matters of mutual interest, including the Afghan peace process and defence cooperation, were also discussed. General Bajwa thanked the visiting dignitary and said the Pakistan Army greatly values its friendly relations with the UK. This is the second meeting between the two in under 1 month. The Indus River water sharing talks between Pakistan and India have resumed on their second and final day in New Delhi. It is their first meeting in 3 years of a commission that deals with water rights on the Indus River. Pakistan is concerned that India's plans for hydroelectric plants will disrupt the flow of the water supplied to 80% of its irrigated agriculture. The talks were delayed due to India's unilateral decision to change the special status of occupied Kashmir. The Pakistani delegation is led by Indus Commissioner Syed Meher Ali Shah, while PK Saxena is leading the other side. The water sharing talks followed a rare military agreement on stop firing on LOC. In Indian-occupied Jammu and Kashmir, forces have launched more inhuman cordon and search operations in several areas of the territory. The occupying troops use the term cordon and search operations as a cover for its extrajudicial killings. Indian forces have cordoned off Lam and Bathnur areas of Pulwama district and are carrying out door-to-door searches. All communication networks, including mobiles and internet, have been cut. Witnesses say a large number of Indian occupying forces has been deployed in the areas. Meanwhile, similar operations are underway in the districts of Srinagar, Baramulla, Badgam, Bandipur and Shopian. U.S. President Joe Biden says he does not consider North Korea's launch of short-range missiles as a provocation. This comes after South Korea said Pyongyang fired 2 non-ballistic cruise missiles off the West Coast. Talking to the media in Washington, Biden said the Pentagon called the launch business as usual. Other officials of the Biden administration said the activity involved weapon systems at the low end of the spectrum. They said these missiles were not covered by the UN Security Council. The launch marks North Korea's first publicly known weapons test since Biden took office in January. In Israel's 4th elections in 2 years, Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu is predicted to fall short of securing enough seats to form a government. Exit polls show Netanyahu's Likud party and its allies are projected to win 53 seats in the 120-seat parliament. Polls predict that opposition parties set to win 60 seats. Netanyahu's rival and Blue and White Party leader Benny Gantz says he will do everything to unite the pro-change bloc. If negotiations to form a government fail again, it could force the fifth elections. Israel's Center Election Committee says the final official results will most likely be announced by Wednesday. Just over 67.2% of those eligible cast their ballots in the elections. The Middle East Quartet says its members have discussed the resumption of meaningful talks to resolve the Israeli-Palestinian conflict. The envoys of the United Nations, Russia, the US, and the EU held a virtual meeting. The UN said the negotiations will lead to a two-state solution, including tangible steps to advance freedom and security. In a statement, it said prosperity for Palestinians and Israelis is important in its own right. The organization said the envoys also discussed the unsustainable disparity in economic development between Israelis and Palestinians. There have been no substantive peace talks between Israel and the Palestinians since 2014. Myanmar's military has freed hundreds of demonstrators arrested during its brutal crackdown on protests. This comes after violence by the junta claimed its youngest victim, a 7-year-old girl. Witnesses say several buses full of prisoners drove out of Yangon's Insein jail in the morning. Many businesses in the city remained shut and streets were deserted after activists called for a silent strike. The Assistance Association for Political Prisoners says at least 2,000 people have been arrested since the February 1st coup. The army has conceded the deaths of 164 protesters, including 9 security officers. But activists say at least 261 people have been killed so far. U.S. Secretary of State Antony Blinken has urged Turkey not to retain Russia's S-400 missile defense system. He was speaking to his Turkish counterpart on the sidelines of the NATO defense ministers meeting in Brussels. Responding, Mevlut Cavusoglu said the purchase of the missile defense system is a done deal. The two sides also discussed shared interest in Afghanistan, Syria, and the Eastern Mediterranean. They also agreed to hold more comprehensive talks in either Ankara or Washington. Russia has proposed Turkey to reopen 3 crossing points in Syria's Idlib and Aleppo starting from 25th of March. These commands were carried by Russian state media and attributed to the Center for Russian-Syrian Reconciliation. Moscow says the recommendation is in line with the humanitarian crisis in Syria. Earlier, Turkey conveyed its objections and concerns about a recent flare-up of violence in northwest Syria to Russia's envoy. This came after Russian jets hit towns near the Turkish border and a hospital in the region. Turkey says it has neutralized 11 militants of the Kurdistan Workers' Party in northern Syria. The Defense Ministry says the fighters were attempting to infiltrate the area where Operation Peace Spring is being carried out. The ministry says Turkish commandos foiled the attempted attack by killing the militants. Peace Spring is one of the 3 military operations launched by Ankara in Syria since 2016. Ankara holds PKK responsible for the deaths of some 40,000 people in a 30-year terror campaign. The UN Human Rights Council has adopted a China-sponsored resolution on human rights cooperation. Beijing says Cuba, Russia, Eritrea, and other countries voiced their support for the resolution at the meeting. Beijing's envoy to UN, Chen Shu, said China's initiative is in line with the aspirations of the international community. The resolution is titled Promoting Mutually Beneficial Cooperation in the Field of Human Rights. It calls on states and stakeholders to engage in constructive dialogue based on impartiality, objectivity, and mutual respect. It also emphasizes a need for active global cooperation to respond effectively to COVID-19 pandemic. A giant container ship that has been blocking the Suez Canal for more than a day has been partially refloated. Port officials said the marine traffic is expected to resume soon. Dozens of vessels were stuck after the container ship became wedged across the canal after suffering a blackout. The Ever Given vessel was bound for Rotterdam in the Netherlands from China. Egypt reopened the canal's older channel to divert traffic amid fears it could remain blocked for days. Nearly 10% of global trade passes through the Suez Canal, which provides the shortest sea link between Asia and Europe. More news stories coming up after the short break. Stay with us. Welcome back. Pakistan has urged the international community to work together to mitigate the simmering Rohingya crisis. Expressing grief over the deaths in the Rohingya campfire in Bangladesh, the Foreign Office said the incident is a sad reminder of the vows of Rohingya Muslims. At least 15 refugees were killed and over 500 others injured in the massive blaze that burned around 10,000 shelters. The crowded camp currently houses 1.2 million Rohingya, most of whom have fled a crackdown by the Myanmar military in 2017. The incident came amid growing frustration among Rohingya refugees over the government's attempt to relocate them. Amid opposition by UN agencies, the government has relocated 14,000 people to the Pashan Char Island, which is prone to natural disasters. President Emmanuel Macron says France will reopen its embassy in the Libyan capital Tripoli on 29th of March. He added the move is to show support for the new Libyan authorities. Talking to media in Paris, Macron called for foreign forces and fighters to leave Libya. He said Paris and its European partners were united in backing the ceasefire. He said France wishes to unify the national army, financial institutions, and work towards planned elections at the end of the year. Paris closed its embassy after evacuating 50 French and British nationals as fighting broke out in Tripoli in July 2014. The US and Mexico have discussed ways to protect migrants amid the escalating border crisis. This comes after US President Joe Biden sent envoys to Mexico to seek help on the flow of migrants. White House border coordinator Roberta Jacobson met Mexican Foreign Minister Marcelo Ebrard in Mexico City. In a statement, Mexico's foreign ministry said the talks aimed at mitigating the root causes of migration. It said the officials discussed different mechanisms for orderly and safe migration and protection of human rights.
This communication will continue. We have not reached a definitive point. It was not the objective of the meeting. The objective was to exchange points of view and information. I thank you for having visited our country, for having accepted this invitation from the Mexican government. I will continue to report on progress we are making. For the time being, good communication, increasingly better and closer relations between both countries.
Torrential rain and flash floods have claimed 2 lives in Australia. Wild weather in recent days has submerged houses, swept away livestock and cut off entire towns. Emergency services found the body of a Pakistani national in a car under 6 meters of water in Sydney's northwest. Media reported police found a second body and an upturned utility vehicle in floodwaters in Queensland state. Australian Prime Minister Scott Morrison toured flood-affected parts of Sydney on an Australian Defence Force helicopter, while New South Wales Premier Gladys Berejiklian warned that water levels would keep rising in some areas. UAE Finance Minister and the Deputy Ruler of Dubai, Sheikh Hamdan bin Rashid Al Maktoum, has died aged 75. His brother and Dubai's ruler, Sheikh Mohammed bin Rashid Al Maktoum, announced his demise in a tweet. Dubai media office says funeral prayers will be restricted to family members due to the COVID-19 pandemic. Dubai has announced 10 days of mourning, with government institutions to remain closed for 3 days. Sheikh Hamdan had served as UAE's finance minister since 1971. George Segal, the prolific actor with a career that spanned more than 6 decades, has died at age 77. In a statement, his family said the actor passed away due to complications from bypass surgery. Segal was nominated for an Oscar for his role in Who's Afraid of Virginia Woolf in 1966. By the 1970s, he often played ironic leading men in films such as The Duchess and The Dirt Water Fox. In the 90s, Segal became better known for television roles. He also excelled in comedic roles, most recently playing laid-back widower Albert Solomon on The Goldbergs. 2 individuals have found an unlikely friendship thanks to technology during the lockdowns around the world. Through Skype, a young Brit and an old French woman have been in touch online for the past 6 months. More in this report.
For 98-year-old Jacqueline Tolu and 20-year-old Elliot Bellman, COVID-19 upset their lives, but also forged an unlikely friendship. Tolu has endured isolation in her care home near Paris, while for Bellman, the virus ruined his plans to be in France to study French. For the past 6 months, a scheme called Cher Ami that pairs elderly people with language students has been helpful for both of them.
I was nervous, just meeting a new person, completely different generation, different culture, different language, obviously. So it's nerve-wracking. Thinking about maybe we don't get on, maybe she doesn't like me, maybe just like that generational gap would be too much because we've got such distinct views of political structures and cultures and so forth. But as soon as I started talking to her, she's very, as you'll see tomorrow, she's very easy to talk to. She's very funny. She just keeps the conversations going so easily.
On their weekly Monday call, Bellman dialed in from his bedroom in southern England, where he has been riding out the pandemic, while Tolu joined while sitting in a wheelchair at her care home in Bonneuil-sur-Marne. Tolu now has someone to talk to and relieve her loneliness, while Bellman has an opportunity to practice his French with a native speaker. But more importantly, they hit it off.
Oui, j'aime bien le lundi.
I said yes, I would like to speak to a young person. And at the same time, it will surely be of benefit for them to speak to me. And for me too, for my morale, and there you go. That's why I accepted it, as it would make me happy.
Tolu says their chats allow her, at least in her mind, to escape the confines of the care home for a little while every week.
European stocks are retreating further amid renewed concerns over the global economic recovery outlook amid a surge of COVID infections. Frankfurt DAX is leading the losses, sliding nearly 0.5%. The CAC 40 in Paris has slipped marginally as well. Italy's FTSE MIB, London FTSE and the Pan-European Stock 600 have also shed fractionally. Earlier, all Asian stocks also traded lower over concerns regarding spiking new coronavirus infections. For the latest updates, you can follow us on social media at indus.news.